Okay, you are all set to go, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, members of the public, council members, staff, and welcome to our September 7th South Mckay Council meeting. Can I get someone to call the meeting to order? Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that the September 7th council meeting of the Township of South Mckay now be opened at 7:01 p.m. All those in favor? Councillor McDonnell, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion is carried. Thank you. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. Okay, approval of the agenda. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Mckay adopt the agenda as I jumped ahead. Are there any additions or deletions? My apologies.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there are no additions or revisions to the agenda this evening.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as it was read? Motion is carried as circulated. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5A. Previous meeting minutes, August the 3rd. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the minutes of the August 3rd regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the minutes of the August 16th special council meeting, including the closed session minutes, be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Presentations and delegations. I believe.
Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, before we roll into the presentations, I believe you have something to read on a staff matter.
Yes, my apologies. Thank you very much for that reminder. Tonight, council wishes to acknowledge the upcoming retirement of Accounts Payable Clerk, Kathy Mckay. Born and raised in Cordis, Ontario, Kathy moved to South Glengarry in 1980 after accepting a job transfer to Lancaster. As fate would have it, she then met her husband, Carrie, and together they raised 3 children, Travis, Dana, and Candace. Kathy began her career with the township working as the secretary/treasurer for the South Mckay Public Utility Commission for 10 years. In 2000, she was hired as the township's accounts payable clerk. Kathy has proudly served the residents of South Glengarry for the past 21 years. She has always greeted and welcomed everyone with her cheery hello and bright smile. Kathy, thank you for your years of service and your excellent representation of our township. Your retirement is well deserved, and we wish you all the best. Now is the time to enjoy unlimited skidoo rides, traveling and spending time with Carrie and your 6 beautiful grandchildren. On behalf of council, Kathy, congratulations, and thank you very, very much for your years of service. All righty. My apologies for that. So now moving on to 6A, delegations and presentations. I believe we have the SD&G OPP crisis response team. Ms. Clerk, would you do a little introduction, please?
I'm going to do that, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
So we'd like to welcome the OPP to our meeting tonight. SD&G Detachment Commander Mark Hemrick. Congratulations on your appointment, Mark, and return to the area. Mark's originally from Cornwall. I know you're going to introduce your colleague beside you and present to us tonight on something that's extremely important, that especially in the middle of a pandemic that's come to light, your mobile crisis response team. So I'll turn it over back to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to welcome the OPP aboard tonight.
Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor, councillors. Thank you very much for the introduction, Tim. I also have with me this evening Provincial Constable Jim Blanchette, who is our Community Mobilization Officer and who has taken a major part in the lead to forming and bringing to fruition the mobile crisis response team we have here at the detachment. I can tell you a little bit about myself. My career began in 2003 at the Toronto detachment of the OPP. I returned home to SD&G in 2008, where in 2013 I was promoted to sergeant. In 2016, I began my acting as a staff sergeant with Akwesasne, then off to Hawkesbury. I was eventually promoted to staff sergeant in 2018, where I moved to Lanark County, which encompasses Smiths Falls, Perth, and Carleton Place. Shortly after that, in 2019, I was the regional manager in charge of traffic and marine safety for East Region, where I was an acting inspector. I returned to Hawkesbury as the interim detachment commander, where I served for 14 months. And on the 19th of April, I began working back in SD&G. I'm extremely proud to be back in the counties and serving in SD&G. It is a tremendous honor, but with that honor comes a tremendous amount of responsibility. I am extremely passionate about the mobile crisis response team. One of the first ones to be put in place was actually in Lanark County, where I worked with Superintendent Derek Needham on its beginnings and its operation, and where I saw growing pains occur with it. I then, when I was in Hawkesbury, I worked with the Hawkesbury General Hospital on securing base funding for their team, and where we built a program from the base up. So the reason I've asked Jim here to present with me this evening is he's actually the subject matter expert on the program in SD&G. As I mentioned before, I am very passionate about this subject. I feel that the program is a tremendous benefit to the communities, to the taxpayers, and to all of the municipalities, but most importantly, to the people the program serves. So we do have a PowerPoint. We're going to try and stick to our time limit. As I said at the beginning of the minute, you'll have to apologize for us. This is our first time presenting together, so there may be a couple of bumps, but we'll do the best we can. I'm just going to share my screen now. And can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes, thank you.
And is it fully up?
We can see your side screens, but I believe it's pretty large for the public.
Okay, I will just stop it for one quick second. I'll go into the PowerPoint. Am I able to? Sorry about that. I'm just. There we are. All righty. So the mobile crisis response team, what it is a partnership where the police form a partnership with a mental health professional within the community. And I'll sort of let Jim take it over from here, because again, he was here from the onset of the program, and he'll be able to sort of take you through some of the finer points of how the program came to be.
So several years ago, we in SDNG realized that mental health calls were continuing to climb, and they're not only important to our community, but important to us too, in that it takes a lot of our resources. And we didn't feel we were doing enough. It was either you go to a place with a mental health call, because often people don't know who else to call, so they call the police. And we're not necessarily the best equipped by ourselves, but we are who is called. And we realized we needed to do more. So we started looking at various forms of funding, and some of the traditional sources of funding were just not available to us. We had a hard time starting. The United Counties graciously agreed to fund us for 1 year. It was a pilot project, so that we would have the data to support the need, and then we could go back and obtain other more traditional forms of funding. So we identified the Cornwall Hospital as our logical partner. The crisis team that existed in the hospital signed an agreement with us, so it's a three-way deal. The counties fund the nurse, and the nurse works directly with a police officer responding to mental health calls, also doing, so there's an immediate on-site assessment, which is just a tremendous benefit to those that are in crisis and to their families. And then some programs only do respond to calls. We do follow up. So we follow that person to make sure they're not slipping between the cracks. So whether it's connecting to services for the person or their families, and we make sure they're supported fully before we relinquish a little bit of a case management role. And it's just allowed us to respond better to these calls. And there's just a quote I've thrown up there, and it's kind of the basis of what everything goes from. It's when persons with mental health in the community are in crisis, neither the police nor the mental health system alone can serve them effectively. And it is essential for the two systems to work closely together. And I just wholeheartedly embrace that. It's the basis for everything we do and why we do it. The mental health professionals often aren't equipped to go into unsafe conditions. They have some skills, obviously, with advanced mental health training and their expertise and experience that they can help out. So primarily the way we work it is the nurse starts the conversation, de-escalates where necessary, does an assessment while they're having a conversation. And the officer, although they are a team and the officer does have input, what we stress is that the officer is to play a bit of a secondary role and just ensure the safety of the mental health professional and let them respond. They are the expert. And so just the next slide, I won't go through all these slides. If anyone's interested, you'll have a copy and you can go through. I'm very aware of the time. So I just want to, as I said earlier, the professional does an assessment. They try to resolve the situations. They refer the person to services if necessary. In the old days, we'd go to a call and it was horrible. You could either apprehend the person if the authority existed, or kind of leave and maybe give a little advice and support the family the best you could, but it certainly wasn't enough. It feels great now. We go to the call and connections are made, services are offered, And, sometimes they're not even accepted that day, but it's amazing, later on they're calling us back and they're looking for some help. So it has been absolutely amazing. It's destigmatized, taken that feeling of criminality away from people. We talk a lot about decreasing stigma, but it's a horrible thing to persons in crisis. And we're, in the old days, okay, you have to go to the hospital, put handcuffs on them, put them in the back of a car. Now it's just, we're treating people in a more humane, modern fashion, and it's just the program is just phenomenal for that. And again, being aware of time, I could just community benefits. I could go on for quite some time. I'll just say this: we're providing a lot better care for those in crisis, for those in need. We have a bit of a unique program here. We look after people with everything from Alzheimer's to youth in crisis and everybody in between. Some of these programs don't do that. We believe in helping everybody that we possibly can. So if there's a mental health component of any kind, any age, any circumstance, we jump in and help out the best we can. We'll talk more about this later, so I won't get into it too much, but it's just the decrease in emergency visits is absolutely phenomenal. And wait times in the emergency, we'll get into again later, but these are just some of the biggies. We're spending so much less police resources in emergency rooms, and we're just getting people, so less apprehensions, less time in the hospital. Those are two of the bigger things as far as what we do. And we're just able to better support those in our community and their families. It's important to mention their families who are also suffering. And we'll get into some of the costs later. Just a quick success story. One case, just to give you an idea of the resources that could be spent. We had one client with over 120 calls for service over a period of a number of years, and they were just kind of always falling between the cracks. We were starting to see an increase in drug use, increase in criminality. We got involved and assisted that individual, offered them a chance to connect to services, followed up with them for, I think this was probably the longest we've ever followed up with anyone, about 2 months, just weekly check-ins, sometimes going to the house, sometimes talking to their family, sometimes just calls. And it's been over a year, and I'm pretty happy to say no other calls for service, which is just phenomenal. And we could go on I could just talk about that for ages, just example after example. That's probably the most dramatic one, obviously, but it's just the officers involved in this program are just thrilled. They really feel they're making a difference. So it's just been phenomenal. So we started this program. We asked for funding for one mental health professional who was an RN. We provided coverage Monday to Friday. Since then, we've been able to secure, in partnership with the hospital, some additional funding. And we now have that original RN as well as 2 part-time social workers. So pretty happy to say we're able to now provide this coverage 7 days a week. And this chart, again, I am very aware of time. It just shows the amount of time that we spend on follow-up. Some people were thinking, your numbers don't justify a full-time RN because it doesn't amount to much more than 1 call per day with a severe mental health component. But there's a lot of people that have been suffering and falling between the cracks, and it's not just those in crisis, it's those that need connection to services. So it might happen on a night shift and an officer will just alert the team, and then they'll do a follow-up during the day, or they're checking in with somebody who we visited last week, last month, whatever. So the majority of our time, I'm really happy to say, is doing follow-up and supporting people until full-time services are connected. Savings, I just see an error here. I didn't change with the newer data. We were always just under 3 hours for many years with wait times in hospitals. We got a little bit better 2019 to 20 that period, just 2.3 hours to 2.5 depending. There's a number of things that are also affecting these times. I'm showing 1.51 hours. It's actually at 1 hour. We're down to 1 hour. So significant reduction in wait time. So we're transporting less people. And when we go, because a proper medical assessment has been made by a professional, it's accepted that, yes, this person is in crisis. They do need to be admitted, and that professional's opinion is taken into account, and they know we don't transport for no particular reason. And not that we ever did. It was just, a professional can make a better assessment than we can. So we're down pretty much to an hour per visit, which is significant.
So as Jim mentioned, we're extremely proud of the accomplishments. And I'm going to talk about, the clients that the team serves. So first of all, it is those persons that are in acute crisis, and having an officer trained with a mental health professional, they are able to de-escalate with those people and properly connect them to the services they need, either immediately or directly thereafter. Jim also mentioned that decreases the stigma that a lot of people, especially those that suffer from mental health, have with the police, because they see a different side of the police. They see a more empathetic, but they also are being looked after by a trained community mental health professional, and they're receiving a community-based assessment. As Jim mentioned, the tools in our toolbox, aren't necessarily expanding, but we've almost got a new toolbox with us now. So significantly assisting those people. He's spoken about the savings in the waiting time. Obviously, from a policing perspective, when we're looking at an average between 2018 and 19 of a 3-hour wait time at our local community hospitals, and we've brought that down to an hour since the inception of the program, that is fairly significant. And that is significantly significant because not only that's an overall savings to the system, right? We aren't taking up valuable emergency room time. We are also freeing up the officers. So oftentimes it is not our frontline patrol officers that are at the hospital with the people who are the most ill, but it is actually the mobile community response team. So those officers that are being freed up are actually being redeployed to crime prevention initiatives. So our biggest statistics is our involuntary apprehensions are down 42.5%. That means the connections that the police or the mobile crisis response team are having with people, we brought it down by almost 43%, the amount of apprehensions that we bring to the hospital. Our diversions, so our community-based referrals, are up 45%. And as you saw, we've brought the wait times down in the hospital by almost 2 hours. So we have some additional graphs, and again, I am cognizant of the amount of time, and I don't want to take up too much time because I would like to leave some time for some questions. But some important things, because, and again, I do focus tremendously on the human side. So the connections that we are making with the people that we are serving and their families. Those are the most important benefits, and I can't stress enough the outstanding work that our officers and nurse and social workers are doing to make those connections with those people and their families. But to give you an example, we did put some numbers behind some things. Now, I'm going to provide a caveat for everyone that's listening right now, that we did, so the data we used, we used one ER doctor's consultation fee, the on-call psychologist fee, one nurse, and 2 constables. For a 2.5-hour visit at the hospital, the yearly cost of apprehensions that was occurring, that was costing the system, so health and justice, just with those 4 factors included, was about $187,225,000 $29. Now, if you multiply that, and that's just our detachment. If you multiply that by 100, which is how many detachments there are across the province, not counting municipal police services, you can see the astronomical cost to the healthcare system. So since we've gone to that 1 hour waiting time period, we've cut that number down by more than half. So $90,352.51. Now, obviously those numbers that I've just presented to you, there are a multitude of factors that we could add into it, but we wanted to keep this more simple. So again, we've shown that there's been a 20% decrease in the number of apprehensions. So when we look at the total savings to the system that we have produced or we are able to show without bringing in such things like simple things like hospital operating costs, hospital administration costs, police administrating costs, transportation costs, fuel, wear and tear on our vehicles. Our total savings to the system that we estimate are about $119,584.73. And that number includes what we are paying the mental health nurse. So as you can see, if you multiply that by 100, the total savings to the justice and health system are tremendous. So this is really a good bang for your buck. And as I mentioned, once again, $119,584, just to give you an example, that is one sergeant's full-time salary that we return to the road in savings. So that's a pretty significant number to think about when you put it into that perspective. So across the province, mental health is noted to be the #1 priority risk factor across community surveys. And the mobile crisis response movement has been proven not only to work across the province, but here. The savings in time, dollars, and resources is a huge significance. And the program allows those resources to be deployed elsewhere, which benefits all. Our county residents, families, and friends deserve the best response care that they are in times of crisis, which speaks to the continued effort which we are looking to continue. Now, the reason that I asked Tim and Kelly to be able to present this evening is that, as Jim mentioned, the program that we currently have operating in SDNG is funded by the United Counties. When I arrived here, one of the goals I have is to switch that funding model to the Ministry of Health. I do not believe that long-term this program should be funded by the counties or by the taxpayers of South Glengarry. This is a Ministry of Health initiative. Mental health should be a Ministry of Health initiative. And we will be presenting to the East Health Network a business case to fund the program on a full-time basis. Part of that business case is requesting each of our municipalities that we serve, the 6 municipalities and United Counties and our Police Services Board, for a letter of endorsement behind the program. And that is the primary reason of our presentation this evening, but also it was to provide you with an introduction to the program. Are there any questions from anyone?
If you could close your screen so I could see everybody on the homepage, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you both for your presentation. I sit at the County Council table and was one of the individuals who supported this, and I'm very happy to see kind of the fruits of that labor, if you will. I'll open the floor up to questions. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I guess I have 2 questions, and one was just in reference to one of the charts you had brought up, the first chart, I believe it was. Can you expand a bit on what the hospital referrals means? It was a smaller block when you were, referring to the time spent on follow-ups. What would a hospital referral look like?
Yeah, so in a case where with a hospital referral, so our nurse, for example, is out at a call, they will contact the hospital. So the nurse has, or social worker has access to all hospital records. So they review the file information, they make the referral, they may include a consult with the on-call psychologist or the emerge doc. But the referral portion of it would be maybe they need to be referred to withdrawal management, addiction services, youth mental health, any one of those programs that exist within the hospital. So rather than doing an admission, a team from within the hospital would give us an appointment date, often right at the scene, and that person would, agree, ideally that, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, if you present yourself to Cornwall Hospital, you'll meet this person, and we set that up. So that's the actual referral directly to a program or system. We have found that if we leave it up to people to do it, it's often difficult. It's overwhelming for them. They don't know who to call. They don't know what to do. They know they want something. They know they need something, but they don't know where to go. So our nurse makes that very direct connection.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I guess, I guess that makes a little more sense when you put it that way. My mind was elsewhere. I guess my subsequent would be, do you feel you're served enough with one nurse and 2 social workers? Or just because in my mind, I'm thinking it's a great, I guess, response time wise, it would be excellent if the call's in Long Sault or St. Andrews and that person's going to Cornwall community, but if they're in Winchester and that call's being sent to, Winchester Hospital or Glengarry Memorial, it'd be a heck of a hike from Long Sault up. Is that, or do you feel if you go to funding through the ministry, would you be asking for maybe more? Or?
I think at this time we're just asking to maintain what we have, and then of course the goal would to be eventually build as we can justify the demand for that service. Right now, I think one mental health professional per day is adequately servicing our community, and of course we could always want more or better or different, but I think right now it's a great place to start.
Excellent. No, thanks for your hard work and everything that you put into this program. It's an excellent initiative. I love it. And I'd like to see it expanded if there's the opportunity for fundings there. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, are there any other questions of members of council? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. I'm the delegate to the counties, and I happen to be at the county table when the decision was made also to approve this program. So it is, as Deputy Mayor Warden says, very, very nice to hear how the program is progressing. And I guess I just have a comment that I just wanted to really commend yourselves and everyone who's been involved in the program, because it's easy to sort of sit back and say, how things are, and it's too bad the system is broken, we can't do anything about it. But to see that the initiative has been taken to improve things for the the betterment of families, because really mental health is such a, it impacts entire families. But I just really wanted to commend you for taking this initiative and seeing it through, and now looking at the next level of how can we make this an evergreen program, so that we can continue to reap the benefits of it, because it really is a fantastic thing. I mean, your statistics are there. I mean, but I'm sure that the feeling on the ground, though, that feeling of the improvements you're making is probably far outweighs those numbers as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Jaworski. Another comment, Mr. Hemerick. I know you're just getting your feet wet, but this council would love to see some quarterly updates, statistical updates. We used to have a regular presentation from our friends at the OPP. Last term of council, it was regular, it was quarterly, and I'm not sure if that's something that we could see again. It's a request. It's always good having the presentations, and it was basically a way for our council to be be kept up to date with what's going on from your side of things.
Well, I'm sure that's certainly a request, Deputy Mayor, that we can make happen. I will connect with Kelly afterwards, and yes, we will certainly get that up and running again.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. It's always good to hear from our law enforcement, and especially when it's on such good news. So we will be in touch. Oh,
Sorry, through you,
Ms.
Mr.
Clerk.
Deputy Mayor, before we move on, I just want to confirm for the minutes and direction moving forward, there was a request for a support letter. Is that something that council, I'm assuming, would like to see come forward?
Oh, absolutely. If that's what they're looking for, there's no issue there.
Perfect. Well, we will prep that and see that moves forward.
Well,
We'll
thank
get
you very
that done
much,
for.
Deputy Mayor, councillors. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you very much, everyone, for having us this evening. It was a pleasure presenting to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep. All righty, we have another presentation, Lancaster Library Evaluation and Feasibility Study. Mr. CAO, are you presenting the presenter?
Yes, I'm going to do that, Mr. Deputy Mayor. A number of months, so through you, to council, a number of months ago, you remember there was a presentation by Karen Franklin, who's the Director of Library Services for the counties, regarding some challenges at the Lancaster Library that included space, accessibility, and there's also some landlocked there with sharing of space with the Lancaster Cenotaph. And then also the increase in usage of the library. So what was suggested was perhaps investigating some renovations or expansions of the library, which would have required a study. A number of years ago in the early 2000s, Ron Rayside, a resident in South Lancaster, who's also an architect, undertook a study, and there were some renovations done to the library. So through funding from the counties, which was requested and received, we engaged Rayside Lavoisier Architects to do the study. And tonight online is Ron Rayside, who's going to make that presentation to council. So welcome, Ron.
Okay, and can I get visuals? So I guess I can share a document. I'll just see if this is an obvious thing. Yes. Thank you, by the way, council. I'll just see if I can get.
Your screen is showing.
All right, and can I get any bigger? No. Well, I guess that's big enough. So you can all see it.
If you use the pluses and minuses on the top left, you could
All right.
probably make it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's probably big enough. Okay. Anyway, as Tim, thank you, by the way, Tim, and thank you to Karen Franklin, who, the Director of Library Services, who helped out during this process. And as Tim said, we've been involved with the library for an awful long time. But the current study is really to bring all of this information up to date, but just to remind people a little bit of the history of the building. It was built in 1902 with a donation of John Ross. And it was part of, well, it's part of what is now 19 branches of the SDG library system. But at the time, it was the first free library in Glengarry, so that was pretty important. And it was designed as a two-story building, but in fact, there was only one story built. There is a very, very steep staircase going up into an attic space, but that space was never really finished. It was designed as a library in 1902 and has been continually used as a library since. It's a heritage building designated by South Glengarry in the year 2000, and it's the heart of a village. So it's a very important building, a very simple, but a highly, what I would call, crafted building. Well, no, that's not doing it. How do I change slide? You all know where it is. It takes about 30 seconds to walk there from council meetings, the corner of Duncan and Military Road. maybe just to go over some of the renovations that happened. We did our study in 2003, and the renovations that followed on the outside was the replacement of the windows. And you can see in that small photograph the old windows that existed. Pretty sad way of lighting up the inside of a building, but anyway, those new windows certainly changed things. There was a lot of repairs of the brick. It's very historic, a very important kind of brickwork. And as well as the roof, a lot of restoration around the roof. As well, there was new handicap ramp in the back. On the inside, for those that remember it back then, there was a hung ceiling that was removed to go back to the original height of the inside, new lighting, and a lot of work painting and repairing some of the moldings. So it could significantly change the atmosphere on the inside and the appearance on the outside. In the back since then, in 2009, the memorial was, the place was changed. It used to be right at the corner of Duncan and Military Road. And there was a lot of landscaping work done by others, which is obviously still an important place. In terms of the needs of the library, if you see that diagram in green, the library is currently 960 square feet. And according to standards established by administrators of rural and urban public libraries of Ontario, it should be about 2,500 square feet. And with what we are proposing, it will go up to 24. So we're almost up to those kinds of standards. And there's and the diagram on the left, there's 6,400 books, and we'd be increasing that volume to 7,500. But what we would be increasing a lot is the number of computer stations from 1 to 4, and as well as a lot of additional seating. The actual location of the actual site plan, you can see the existing building with the memorial installation in the back, with the next door bank building. And what we're proposing is out in the back. We didn't want to take away from the building, and there isn't really much other choice in where can we expand on the front or on the side. It just doesn't have that kind of a space available. So it was the back being the main option. This is the existing plan of the library as you come in to the left from the front from Military. During COVID, the circulation was changed a bit of people using both entrances, but there's a very small history section with a tiny washroom, if you can call it that, and with staircases leading down to the basement, and where there's a lot of mechanicals still today, and a very steep, almost inaccessible staircase leading up to the attic. The addition would involve making the main entrance off Duncan Street with a redesigned ramp for disability, people with handicap and seniors, with a replacement of a new reception area, much better washrooms, including a handicapped accessible washroom, and freeing up some of the space in the front, including the space for local history and children's sections and so on. There's also a staircase going down to the basement. The basement is a bit of an option. We hadn't really planned on any renovations to the basement, but it is sort of space for future use, in addition to being able to put mechanical equipment and other kinds of service functions. This is an elevation. We opted for a flat roof to really be in contrast with the existing library and really to put the accent on the existing library, but with an extension and using a different kind of outside material. Again, working what we call contrast and not trying to imitate the existing. And there's two different options. There's one using a yellow brick to contrast with the red brick on the original building. But there's also a sort of a sheet metal kind of traditional siding that could be used. There's no real cost difference between the two. There's sort of two different approaches. Both of them having heritage sort of considerations. And this is the front from Duncan Street, so you can see the main entry with a lot of light coming into that new addition. And windows in the basement, assuming that would be the option that would be retained. Again, two options for the finishing, and with the side looking onto the cenotaph and that memorial space, And in fact, even the Legion mentioned the chance to have seniors, when there were events, to come in out of the cold when the weather outside wasn't in the best of conditions. Again, with the two options, and these are sort of two perspectives, just to show again with the from two different points of view and two different kinds of finishing. The basic plan remains the same with the two options. So the crunch comes with the cost. Construction costs have almost doubled in the last 4 to 5 years. So building today is not the same as it was building 4 years ago, as I'm sure you know. So the basic construction cost would be a bit over $600,000, and then what we call direct costs. It'd be indirect costs, which involves development fees, professional costs, and for a total of $830,000. So it's major dollars, but it would certainly make a huge difference for that very important building, as I said, in the heart of the village and serving a very central kind of function within the village of Lancaster. So that's it, I believe. That's the end of my presentation. Okay.
Okay, Ron, if you could stop sharing your screen, that would be wonderful. And I'll be able, there we go. Thank you very much for your presentation. I do sit on the County Council Library Board, and I do know that this is a very active location. It is definitely the hub in South Glengarry. Are there any questions of council members for Mr. Aside? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you. And thank you, Ron, for your presentation. And I had some of my questions have been answered through your presentation. I was concerned about the flat roof. I've never been a big fan of flat roofs, as it seems like we're always having to repair them and maintain them at a significant expense, where the roofs tend to, but now I can kind of see what you're saying there. I do like the fact that you put this addition at the back and you're keeping the original building front and center and making it what catches your eye rather than, trying to draw a lot of attention to the addition. So I can kind of understand that a little bit. Still not 100% convinced on the flat roof. I had one question about the accessibility ramp. I see a mezzanine built in, an entryway where you come in and there's another door. And is it possible, and I don't know what cost would be, to have some kind of a lift or something in there so that we didn't have this huge long ramp outside, that everybody could go into an automatically opening door, similar to what we have at the arena, and then whether there could be a staircase or a lift on, either one, and they could just, raise up and go in. I don't know if that sort of thing is feasible or not. I guess we have a committee that looks into that sort of stuff. Maybe we should ask them. So those were a couple of questions. And as far as the siding, it's very hard to tell from the pictures, but I don't know. Somebody smarter than me needs to think about the siding and what looks the best. But anyways, very good. Thank you for this. It really gives us something to go on.
I can answer that. Maybe it's not impossible to have a lift, and there are lifts on the market for handicap. It's not necessarily an economy. It probably comes at the same price. And there is other maintenance kind of issues with a lift. I mean, it's a hard thing to integrate, and you would probably need a ramp anyway, just in case the lift for one reason or the other didn't work. But anyway, it is an option, but it does come with its set of problems.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. Thank you, Mr. Rayside, very much for your presentation. I'm sort of on Councillor Lang with I'm not a huge fan of the flat roof, or I guess I associate that more with the modern look, but certainly I do appreciate where you're placing the addition. Also, I really like the idea that the main doors are the main doors for everyone. The fact that the accessible doors were on one place and the main door was separate, I think this is a much more inclusive approach. And I think I heard from your presentation that you have been in discussions with the Legion, because I know there's, in one of the pictures it says, the memorial tree will have to be removed, and I'm hoping that there is discussion with them about that.
Okay, we had 2 meetings with the Legion, and we presented at each stage of where our thought was, and in both of those meetings, there was considerable sympathy for going ahead with this kind of work. But there was also the fact that the memorial tree that is there, is in fact dying. There's a major crack in it, and so there was thought that because that tree would have to be replaced, then moving it then became sort of a more reasonable option in the eyes of the Legion. So, and anyway, we did lay it out where that kind of extension of the library would be, and so that they were in agreement once we went through all of the explanations. The theory of it, I know there's sometimes an issue with the flat roof. First of all, another kind of, there is a philosophy in a lot of heritage buildings that when you're doing something new, you don't want to imitate what is there. You really want to do something that is in contrast. Or at least that's one approach. There have been additions over time that have been closer to the existing building. But in addition to that, the roof of the existing building, which is a very important heritage roof as well. I mean, we discovered those maple leaves on that sheet metal kind of roof, and there would be a very complicated roof intersection issue if we had a sloped roof. And so I think for all of those reasons, and having that sort of bit more modern, although it's more traditional maybe than it looks. I mean, it's a very formal setting up of the windows, and there are a lot of allusions to the existing building. But anyway, I know some people have problems, but I really think it's that jewel of a building that we really have to make sure that it remains as visible as possible, the existing building. So.
Thank you. If I could have a supplemental, please.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rayside. I think the question might be for staff. Now, Mr. Rayside was mentioning about how it's been designated as a heritage building, and we do have a heritage committee, but that we don't engage them. I don't think we've engaged them this term of council yet. Is this the sort of thing that they would need to be involved in at some point? Anyone can provide some clarity on that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. In the past, we have engaged our Heritage Committee on projects which involved buildings that are designated as a heritage building. So depending on the direction it goes in, it's certainly something that would fall under their purview.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only, it would be in St. Raffles, there was an application for part of the building to be demolished. And that was something that the Heritage Committee reviewed. Councillor McDonnell. Can
I just add one comment, by the way? Sorry, just in reference to the comment about the style of the building. I've been working on the Bishop's house for years and years, and I don't know how long, but a very long time. And that renovation that happened in the 1920s was not an imitation of what was there before. It added its own touch. So just to say that most heritage buildings in the area, in fact, have had that approach where something new is, in a way, setting off what is there. It's a complementary approach rather than a copying approach. So, and I have a heritage building myself in South Lancaster. That's a protected building by South Glengarry. And even then, even the shed over time was in a way contrast to the original building. It wasn't a consciously designed kind of building. It's not the same as the library or the Bishop's house, but it's still that sort of constant issue. And if there is any presentation to be made to the committee, obviously I'd be willing to do that, but that may not be the way that you proceed. So.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Rayside, for your presentation. I do like the design of it. I know I myself am not a big flat roofer myself either, but I do agree with you. It does add a lot of contrast, and the last thing we want is contrast that takes away from the existing building. Just a comment, I guess, that I was very happy to hear that there was consultation this time with the Legion. I remember the first presentation, and that was my major concern was none really had taken place at that point, although it was early stages. But I'm glad to hear you've consulted with them, because that was the one question that popped out to me when I saw the name of this presentation. So thank you for your work and presentation.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So moving on, thank you very much, Mr. Rayside. So we're going to continue on with our meeting. We appreciate the information that you provided us. It gives us all a lot to chew on, and I'm sure staff will be in touch. Thank you. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, the Glen Walter Area Master Plan update.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'd like to introduce a familiar face, Marco Vancelli from EVB. To give an update and further information on the Glen Walter Area Master Plan. Marco, welcome.
Thank you very much to Mr. Mills and Mr. Deputy Mayor, council members and administration. Thank you again for your time. It has been a long time in the works, working our way through the Glen Walter Water and Wastewater Master Plan. But after our last steering committee meeting, we have a direction that we'd like to take the project. And I'd like to present that to all of council prior to taking it to the public and proceeding on with the public information and consultation sessions. So when we set up the whole study for the master plan, the objective was set so that there was the objective of developing a preferred strategy for providing water and wastewater servicing to the service area that was defined as everything from Boundary Road to Ray Road, and then everything from the St. Lawrence River up to the Highway 401. And then to complete the master plan with the meeting the requirements of the Environmental Assessment Act. So when we were looking at developing a plan for serving this area, the first goal was to determine what area should be serviced within the first 30 years of the planning window. So this figure does demonstrate within all the darkened lines what area we were looking at servicing, which was primarily along the core of Glen Walter, including Farlinger's Point and Place Saint Laurent, as well as up Purcell Road right up to Town Road, and then the extension of the services to the Boundary Road properties. And then within the 50-year window, we'd be looking at extending those services throughout the rest of the study area. So when we crunched the numbers to determine the cost of servicing this area, we found it was very expensive because of most of the homes being developed on private services. The frontage for the properties was excessively large, and the cost per residential unit was extremely high because of the linear costs involved for servicing the developed areas. So as a result of that evaluation, the steering committee refocused our attention on how to develop the properties that are within a closer vicinity to the Glen Walter core area. So we developed a servicing plan that we'd like to propose, which includes the properties within the dark black lines on this figure, which again includes properties abutting the Glen Walter service area, expanding up Purcell Road to include the Country Club Estates development, and then extending to the west to include the additional phases of Place Saint Laurent, as well as the area just north of Farlinger's Point. So if we were to do a comparison of what growth this area can accompany, and do a comparison of that to Long Sault. So in the last 3 years, we looked at what number of building permits were being issued by the two areas. And in Glen Walter, we had an average of about 10 units within the serviceable area being issued, which would represent about a 1% growth rate within the serviced area of the Glen Walter Court. And then when we did a comparison to Long Sault, which has readily available municipal services to support growth in that area, that number jumped up to about 41 units per year on average for the last 3 years, which represented a 3.2% increase per year. So we looked at this core area and the growth within the core area, and we established that there was an existing 440 units, which had a representative population of 963. There are 72 units that are committed for municipal servicing, which would have a correlated population of about 252 persons. So if we were to base our growth on what's committed in 2021, we would have a total committed unit of 512 with a population of just over 1,200 people. So if we were to apply a growth rate of 3% to this base over a 30-year period, we would grow to about 1,243 units within the study area, which is equivalent to about 27 units being constructed per year over that 30-year window. And the population would grow from 963 people to just under 3,000 people with all that development occurring. So what do we need to do in order to support the growth within this study area? So when we took a look at the requirements within the distribution system as well as the wastewater collection system, we identified that there was a water shortage. So there's a new water tower being proposed to service this area. And previously, WSB had prepared some hydraulic models, and through their work, they established that some of the existing water mains, as well as some of the sanitary sewers, were under capacity for the design flows for this area. So there are some slotted upgrades for the planning purpose in order to accommodate the new growth. In addition to the linear infrastructure, there will be a requirement for the expansion of both your water treatment plant as well as your wastewater treatment plant. As both of those facilities are on the existing site or the same site, there is a potential requirement to do a land acquisition in order to relocate one of those facilities to an adjacent property. That would be all evaluated and researched through the completion of the next phase of the project, which would be a Schedule CEA for those facilities. So if we were to now look at the cost to accommodate this proposed growth within the study area. So based on a 30-year debenture at 2.32% interest, the total cost of the project is just under $45 million, which would come to a cost of just under $37,000 per lot. And if you were to debenture this over a 30-year period, the cost per residential connection would be just over $1,700 per year for that 30-year period. That does not take into consideration any opportunities for funding. The township is in the process of seeking funding under the ICIP Green Stream Intake number 2 to have the water tower constructed, as well as some of the water mains upgraded and hydrants installed in order to facilitate the fire flows in the existing area. So there's a potential to receive up to 80% funding for that component of the project. And there have historically been funding opportunities for municipalities to obtain up to 66% funding for large municipal infrastructure projects. So if we were to apply these two funding programs to the $45 million project, it would drop the cost per lot down to just under $12,000. And if you were to debenture that over a 30-year period, it would cost the existing homeowners, as well as all the growth that's going to occur in the area, just under $550 per year for the 30-year period. What happens if we don't proceed with this project? There will not be any ability to have growth within the serviced area. There is a number of committed properties already that exist, and no further commitments can be made to additional properties. The water tower would need to proceed, as there is no storage within the water distribution system. So this would help maintain the water pressure within the system and enable the township to do some end-of-life service repairs for some of the mechanical components at the Glen Walter water treatment plant that haven't been able to be done because there is no way of maintaining pressure within the distribution system. The water mains for some of the areas would still have to be increased in size, and the same with the sewers. And just like any other mechanical system that is out there, the mechanical and electrical systems at the wastewater treatment plants, as well as the water treatment plant, are nearing the end of their useful service life and will need some updating and replacement. There is a concern also at the wastewater treatment plants with the concrete structure that's there. Although it doesn't need replacement tomorrow, there is an estimate that within the next 30 years, the concrete structure itself will be nearing the end of its design service life. So if the township did not want to proceed with the project to provide service to growth within this area, the existing residents would still be looking at almost a $24 million project within the next 30 years in order to provide the same level of service that the township is currently offering them. So this would result, without funding, in a cost per lot of just under $54,000. Or if you were to debenture it over a 30-year period, it would cost just under $2,500 without any funding to these homeowners. If funding was received, of course, that would drop to just under $800 a year for the 30-year window. So the next steps, we believe we've come up with a strategy for servicing the Glen Walter core area, as well as providing for sufficient growth for the 30-year window. So we would like to take this to the public for their input, as well as a circulation of that information to review agencies to receive their input on the plan. Once that information has been received, we can complete the report for the master servicing plan and issue a notice of completion, which we will put the report on circulation for 30 days to the public for their comments. And then once council has accepted the recommendations from the report after seeing the input from the community, the process for the master plan has been completed. And the next steps would be to initiate a Schedule C EA for the plant expansions, since it has been acknowledged that those plants cannot support the 30-year growth. So that would be a requirement. And then the township will continue to search for funding opportunities, just like they are with the ICIP program for the water tower. So that concludes the Glen Walter presentation for the night.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco, for that presentation. I just want to reiterate those costs that you outlined, the 30-year one with the growth and upsizing is approximately $715 without funding, and the other one, status quo, was about $2,488 per year without funding. That's in addition to the regular water and sewer charges that the ratepayers would be paying, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Just want to make sure that folks are aware of what's coming down the line. So thank you very much for that detailed report. I am looking forward to getting feedback from the public Do we have a date in mind for that? As I'm hoping it's sooner than later.
Oh, absolutely. We can have a discussion with the administration and our project steering committee. We can probably go to the public within the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's up to the township as to what forum you would like to take this public open house in. We can do it online, or we could reserve a facility within the township and prepare boards or a presentation that we can make directly to the public and have a discussion face to face. So I'll have that.
Okay, bless you, Councillor Jaworski. Okay, so that's good information. I guess I'd put it to staff to pick what we feel is best to move forward in regards to COVID and getting as much feedback as possible. I feel like this needs to be done imminently, and we need to get the final process for the EA done so we can make plans for the next step. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, Marco. It's definitely long overdue seeing this. Every time we speak about water and sewer, especially in Glen Walter with this council, it's been, but we need to do something for size and expansion. So it's good to see this finally moving forward. I think, and at least more or less an initial contact has to be made with the residents and to explain some of this. I think we need to look at, or to put the options out there to them and start gathering some feedback before, and hope, whether that's by Zoom or something of the sort like that. And then we go to an in-person at a later date. I'd like to see this, I'd like to see work started on this with the public consultation begin as soon as possible. One thing I'd just like to ask, and this is more for staff, I guess, maybe more particularly to Chief Robertson. I know I'm sitting here looking at it as a debenture that these people are going to have to pay. If there's some way we can maybe soften that blow, if we can, I guess, put into perspective what additional services they'll be getting as far as fire services and what kind of a percentage these people can maybe expect in savings on their insurance when we have fire protection available through the hydrants that are there, because as of right now they're used more for flushing and really wouldn't be used in a fire. So it'd be nice to see if there's a gift we can kind of give to them as we give them, you know, ultimately the potential bill.
Through your Mr. Deputy Mayor, that type of information has always been quite difficult to get from insurance companies. Though with the scope of a project like this, that would be an important thing for us to research and provide whatever information we could pass on to our residents. So that is something we could attempt to assist with.
Just in my mind, it would, like you say, I know it's always been a difficult thing to get, and even if we could get an estimate, just, you know, maybe most of that's going to be eaten up in savings on their insurance. It's you know, taking from one hand, giving with the other, but in the long term, there's definitely a benefit to the area. And I think we definitely need to, especially for growth in the township.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. I wanted to echo the sentiments of Deputy Mayor Warden and Councillor McDonnell with regards to, we do definitely need feedback from the residents of Glen Walter to understand, you know, both for them to understand what's being reviewed and also, you know, what's their opinion on this, because it is very significant capital. One question, and maybe this is what Deputy Mayor Warden was referring to earlier, but I just wanted to confirm on your slide that talks about total servicing costs. Your first block, you say, you know, annual payments for existing residential lots would be, and so I just wanted to be clear that was, or how exactly are what is exactly being calculated there, and how are you taking into account those 1,200 other homes that are coming online potentially in the next 30 years?
Yes, so I thank you for that question. The calculation has been made that there'll be equal repayment for all the infrastructure investment by both the existing residential lots as well as the growth components. So that is why you'll see that because the growth that's going to potentially occur within the area provides a larger number of residential connections to distribute the cost over. The cost for the servicing expansion, including the growth, is less per lot than maintaining a status quo and not expanding the services. The other important thing to note is that there's a lot of fixed costs related to the operation of the water plant and the wastewater plant. So with the potential growth that could occur, you'll be sharing those fixed costs over a larger mass of people. So there could be a potential reduction in those costs of operating the systems when there is a larger population to distribute those annual operating costs.
That's like the Deputy Mayor Warden's point earlier about, this is on top of what they're paying, but what they're already paying for their water, that with a larger base of users could come down.
That's correct. So this represents strictly the capital repayment.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lang, you had your hand up?
I didn't, but simply because I was on the committee and I had heard this before. But I will echo what everyone else has said. I think it's time to get moving on this project, and the next step is to go to the residents. And if all the council is in favor of that, I'm supporting it as well. I think we need to get it out there. And I think we need to spend a little time and explain to them just, what the options are. The fact that there isn't an option of doing nothing, really. Sooner or later, some things are going to have to be done there. And, so we have to move forward with something. So I think this is, as far as the committee can come up with, this is the best solution. So let's move forward with it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor McDonnell for the final question.
Just a question subsequent, I guess, to Councillor Jaworski's and yourself. As far as that being an additional cost on top of, I guess, their water usage and delivery, would there also be, are we also looking at I guess, more or less forced connections for, say, example, say Samuel Drive, I believe, isn't serviced by water and wastewater. Will we then also be tacking on for some of these residents a connection fee?
Sorry, my take on this cost is it would replace your impost fees that you currently have for those new connections.
Okay, no, just wanted to be sure that, some of these houses weren't going to be paying a development fee and some of them were going to be paying that on top of a $10,000 connection fee to connect to the line that they aren't presently connected to and they're on private servicing. Okay.
Yeah, good point, Councillor McDonnell. One of the things too that I would like to point out is that this plan does not include forcing the Bayview Estates area to connect on. They will remain private. That will remain private. So in the future, if there's something changes, well, we'll have to deal with it at that point. But that area is not included in this.
Okay, clarification.
Yeah. Councillor Lang.
And just for those that weren't on the committee, when we talked about the expansion there, we talked about putting in plants that were like modularized so they could be expanded in the future if we do need to get bigger, after the 30 years, or if growth happens faster than we expect. Right now, the footprint that we have where the plant is now, we can't do that. And so we need to set this up so that we don't get stuck in the same position again, that things can be expandable.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Madam Clerk, I have a resolution for the next report, but I do not have anything for this one. Are we okay to proceed without a resolution on this report? I believe they have clear direction from council to go to the next step and get the public meeting done to finish up our EA.
Yes, I'll note in the minutes the direction that was provided through the delegation, and I think that's sufficient.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Marco, you're on to the next report, if that's you reporting. In regards to the road maintenance plan, I guess I should have made that clear.
No, I apologize. I'm just getting the presentations switched.
Not a problem. Perfect. Your screen is now sharing.
All right, well, thank you once again, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Administration and Council, for the opportunity to come and present some additional information on the road maintenance plan that we are working on with your administration to move the budgetary planning process forward. So I'm going to ask Ian if he's available to lead us through the first couple of slides.
Okay. Can everyone hear me at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, we're very pleased to be here tonight to present an update and take a look at what the next step is in understanding or having a better understanding of South Glengarry's road network. So the first slide we have presented tonight, it's in front of you right now, is just an overall snapshot of the makeup of your road system. You have 154 kilometers of hot mix pavement in your road system, which represents about 40%. You have 84 kilometers of surface treated or double surface treated roads, which make up about approximately 22%. And the final 146 kilometers of roadway is in granular or gravel as it speaks, which represents about 38% of your overall total road network. So in the evaluation that was done on the roads need study, the two previous roads need study, they came up with a pavement condition index. And the scoring in the pavement index basically tells us, or the factors that we look at in determining the status of any section or sector of the road section. So just as a quick review of that, there are 8 components to the items that make up your condition index. And these are weighted items. So the structural adequacy is given 20 points. So that's obviously the most important thing in your roads is what is the base of your road like? What can it support? What can it not support? And that's evaluated on a score out of 20. In conjunction with that, the next most important one is drainage and roadside drainage, because as everyone can appreciate, if we don't have drainage, we have no support for our roads, or particularly in various times throughout the year. And the next item of great importance is surface width. And surface width, particularly when we get into hard top roads, whether it be asphalt or surface treatment or double surface treatment, we need a certain width in order to handle the traffic and the speed of which the traffic goes at. On a granular road, it's pretty well felt that traffic will go whatever speed the road will allow them to do. So if we have a surface treated road that's way too narrow, then it causes many other problems. So surface treatment is given a fairly high weighting. It's given 15 out of 100 in a score. And then we look at other items that are very important, but maybe a little less important, and that's the maintenance demand. Is this a road that the township staff on an annual or a monthly basis has to go up and do repairs on? We then look at the shoulder condition. What are the shoulder conditions on the road? what is the surface, the wearing surface on the road like? And then lastly, the horizontal and vertical alignment. And for the most part, within most of the roads in the township, horizontal and vertical alignment is not an issue. So that is generally fairly good. So on the left of the screen, you'll see the Pci scores. When you total all of these scores for the different segments of road, if you end up with a score less than anywhere from 0 to 55, it indicates to you that that portion of the road's in very poor to poor condition. And conversely, if you get up into 55 to 65, you're into poor at one end to fair. 65 to 75 is a fair road. 75 to 90 is good, and anywhere between 90 and 100 is very good. So those are the factors we look at in investigating the road. And this has all been done in the previous roads needs study. Move ahead, Marco. So the next slide, we wanted to take a look at how these affect the pavement condition index affects our roads, in particular our asphalt roads. So as we were going through the information that was provided, it was all lumped together in one big category, just road by road. But when we did a sort on it, we did a double sort, if you will. We sorted out the areas in your hamlets, and we sorted out on your rural paved roads, and that's your typical concession roads or north-south roads. What we found in your rural paved roads, for the most part, they're in very good shape. We have about 81% with a performance, a pavement condition index greater than 60, which is, if you go back to the original chart, that's telling you it's somewhere between fair to very good with the roads. 54% of that, the roads were good to very good. So for the most part, your rural roads are in reasonably good shape. When we took a look at the hamlets, however, we only had about 46% of them that were above a PCI of 60, which represents about, in total, there's about 55 kilometers of roads in your hamlet areas. So plus or minus 50% of them are in very poor shape. So this, I don't think, is news to anyone. It's been a discussion that we had with your road superintendent, that we have to take a look at the hamlet areas to see how we can address those. Does that become a priority over other roads? And going back to Marco's previous slides, and one that will be subsequent to this, we will see that we need some decision-making tools as to what we're going to attack. And that'll be based in, that direction will come from council or a committee of council. Although the next slide, although it's not an exact way of doing it, we did take the pavement condition index and apply it to your surface treated or your double surface treated roads. You have a total of 84 kilometers of surface treated roads. And again, you have a group that's in fair to good condition, approximately 76%, which overall isn't a bad score. But what we have found in the surface treated roads, that many of the roads are failing, and it's mainly because of the structural adequacy of the roads, and or the subsequent traffic on the surface treated roads. And I think that's a discussion that we have to take a look at in the future of any roads that are being proposed for surface treatment. We have to look at how and who is expected to be using these roads, because what we've found is where there's very heavy either agricultural traffic or if it's a route that's commonly used by trucking, etc., maybe surface treatment is not the right way to go. For the purpose of this meeting, we didn't bother with the granular roads, but I'm just going to speak to them for a moment, although we don't have a slide on it. But your granular roads are also in fairly good condition. There's 69% of them scored, if we were to apply a PCI to it, of over 60, which is very good. So for the most part, your granular roads are in reasonably good shape. I guess now we get into the hierarchy of road maintenance, and maybe I'll flip it back to Marco if he wants to start going through this next section.
Perfect. So based on the PCI, the range of the PCI, we've identified what type of maintenance should be considered in order to improve the road conditions. So you'll see as the PCI decreases, the amount of work to restore the PCI back up to a good rating becomes more and more expensive. So when we're in the 90 to 100 PCI range, we have deferred maintenance, which means we're really not going to plan to do any work, but township staff will be required to go out and just do their regular inspections and address any minor defects that they find before they get any worse. Now, if we were to drop that down to 70, the PCI of 70 to 90, preventative maintenance will start happening, where the township should start planning on doing crack sealing. And crack sealing is a relatively inexpensive activity and results in an increase of your PCI of up to 10 points. So you're going to be extending your useful service life of your road by doing some preventative maintenance on it. Now, if the PCI were to continue to drop down to the 55 to 75 range, we'd be looking at some rehabilitation of the roadway. And at that point, we'd be looking at doing an asphalt overlay on top of the surface, which now is going to cost, upwards to $15 a meter squared. It may not restore your PCI up to 100, but it'll definitely add some condition ratings back to the service life of that segment of the road. If the PCI were to drop down to the 30 to 55 range, we'd be looking at doing a shave and pave. So our costs now have increased from $15 a meter squared to $19.50 a meter squared. If we let the PCI drop to 30 or below, we'd be looking at a full road reconstruction. And then your unit cost would increase from the $20 per meter squared up to $75 per meter squared. So it's very important that in order to be budget conscious, that we try to make sure that the PCIs don't drop to a level where it's going to cost more money in order to restore them up to a good rating. And similarly, with the double surface treated roads, we've got three categories here. So we have a PCI of 70 to 100, which means the road has recently been done and is in good condition. At 60 to 70, we're looking at making a recommendation to reapply the double surface treatment at a cost of about $8 per meter squared, which would reset your PCI up towards to about 100. Now, in the 0 to 60 category, I have a cost for full road reconstruction. And at this level, I think I had gone maybe to a worst case scenario where the road has degraded to a point where it needed to be fully reconstructed. So I'm thinking maybe if we can develop a fourth category in here, if we can go to restoring the double surface treatment. The typical practice for the township is to place 100 millimeters of granulars and then apply the double surface treatment, which would be a cost of about $12 a meter squared. So I'm thinking about introducing another category of, with a PCI of 45 to 60, having that intermediate step in before doing the full road reconstruction with a PCI of 0 to 55. But even with the double surface treatment roads, if you let the PCIs decrease to a point, the surface starts to break up and then your subgrades start to deteriorate and the costs again start to climb in order to rehabilitate the road segments back up to a reasonable PCI. So there are a number of different models in order to determine the deterioration rate of your roads. And so this was taken from a reference paper that's noted on the bottom of the page here. And it demonstrates that, you know, with your PCI starts at just under 100 in year zero, there's different rates of deterioration that different roads can experience. So at the 20-year mark, you could be anywhere from a PCI of 60 down to a PCI of 0. So it's very important now for the township to start tracking the PCIs between the different road needs studies that are being done every 5 years. So if we could start keeping track of the deterioration rates and the PCI decreases over those 5-year intervals, the township can develop similar tables to this for their rural roads in comparison to their hamlet roads, so that a better understanding of how fast the roads are deteriorating, and then use that in order to better plan for your road rehabilitation works. So we wanted to do a life cycle cost analysis, which compared the maintenance requirements for a gravel road to a surface treated road. The road need study that was done for the township had recommended that, or had used a 7-year cycle for double surface treated roads. We have used that in this example. Again, a 7-year cycle, that could be an average. There will be some roads that will not deteriorate as quickly, and there could be some roads that deteriorate faster. So again, with the use of your road need studies, if we can have them determine the PCI in a similar fashion every time they're done every 5 years, we can determine the actual service life of your roads within the township, and then make better decisions on the frequency of the surface treatment for these types of roads. So based on a 7-year cycle, it is more expensive for a double surface treated road if you're going to be reapplying that surface treatment every 7 years. If you were to increase it to 8 years, the costs for the gravel roads are pretty much the same every year. And that's just under $10,000 per kilometer. The question was asked that this number varied quite significantly from the numbers that were provided in July. And the reasoning for that was we took a look at the practices that were being done and the tonnage of stone and gravel that were being placed on the roads. And there was a significant quantity shortfall from what was being placed versus what is needed in order to maintain your gravel roads, with the 75 millimeters of granulars being added every 3 years. So that cost had gone up. We also adjusted our unit rates to reflect the unit rates that Mr. LeBlanc had seen from his rehabilitation works that he has overseen within the township this year. But the interesting thing is, if you take the life cycle cost now and extend it over a 14-year period, so we're now making the assumption that at 7 years, because the road's still in relatively good condition, we're going to only apply the double surface treatment. We're not going to add another 100 millimeters of granulars. So we've already paid for that. So the cost does go down. So at a break point, maintaining a double surface treated road is more cost effective than maintaining gravel roads, as long as the subgroup base has been prepared properly and they're monitored and maintained so that they don't degrade too quickly. So this is a summary of the recommended capital works from the road need study. So some of the activities that were recommended for 2021 are either underway or completed. At some point, we would like to sit down with members of administration and potentially members of council to determine how to prioritize how the township wants to spend their money. So we'll be addressing that later in this presentation. I just wanted to show the commitments on an annual basis for the maintenance of your asphalt roads. And similarly, the road needs study really didn't address any of the requirements for the gravel roads. So this is the annual cost for maintaining those roads. This is just under or just over $1.4 million per year. So if we were to look at establishing a budget based on the proposed road projects in the road needs study, the surface treatment requirements of making sure all your surface treated roads are double treated every 7 years, and then the upkeep for the gravel roads, we're looking at an annual budget of anywhere from $3 million to $3.5 million. The budget over the last 3 years has been between $2.4 million and 1.5 or 1.6 million. So the budgetary numbers that are shown in this table reflect the wages, equipment rentals, and materials purchased by the township, but does not include other items that you would find on your general ledger for maintenance of some of that equipment. So this is strictly cost related to capital works within the township. So when we get to the next step, we're going to start looking at the annual roads budget. So there's two ways we can approach preparing that budget along with your administration. So council can come and say that, you know, we would like to have a capital works budget for their roads at $2.5 million. And then we can sit down with your roads group and figure out how to prioritize the spending of that money on the various capital projects. Alternately, township can decide that we want a plan that, you know, increases the level of service for the roads. So for example, if your average PCI for your roads is approximately 60, council can make a request to know what would the budgetary requirements be in order to increase the average PCI from 60 to 70 over the next 5 years. So there's different ways of approaching how to develop the budget. So we'll be reviewing that with your administration and hopefully a committee so that we can better address the needs of the township. So once we have some direction on how to set the upper limit of the budget, you know, we'll be incorporating a budget that will take into consideration the needs for your gravel roads, and then trying to determine how to divvy up the remaining budget between maintaining good roads from deteriorating, how much money should be put aside for repairing deteriorated roads, and then how much money should be put aside annually towards upgrading road surfaces from either gravel to double surface treated or from double surface treated to asphalt. Again, there should be an evaluation tool put together for the roads department that helps them establish a work plan for the upgrade of various roads. So if there has been some interest from the public that is supporting improving the surface conditions on a road, the roads department will come up with a plan on what to look for on that segment of road in order to determine whether or not it can be upgraded and what the relative costs would be in order to do so. So these are a few of those items that need to be taken into consideration when making those decisions. So historically, the township has based the prioritization of their roads capital projects based on the performance rating or the PCI of the roads and the traffic counts on the roads. So this comes directly from the road need study that Greer Galloway had prepared. But we feel that should be some other criteria that the township considers when determining the priority of their roads. So some of those conditions and criteria can be the location of the road. Should there be more attention given to hamlets and rural roads? What the condition of the road bases are, the history of the repairs and operations of different road sections, and the observations of the road patrol that your roads group is undertaking on a regular basis. So the next step in order to establish a budget for the following year is to set up a working committee that will take into consideration some of the information that we have provided today. Nothing is written in stone when it comes to developing how the township wants to prioritize their work, as well as how to develop your budget. So there are a lot of decisions that need to be made. And I would recommend, and I've talked to your administration, that we set up a committee that will meet twice, probably over the next month and a half, in order to make some of those decisions so that we can develop a budget that would be acceptable to council in order to move forward with your roads budget for next year, as well as the following 4 years. And another thing that we'd like to note here at the bottom is the establishment of a timeline for tendering processes. It's very important to know what projects are coming down the pipeline so that the roads group can make sure that they prepare any geotechnical information ahead of time, as well as any engineering design that's required, so that when the township does go out to tender these works, they're doing so at an opportunistic time, early in the year or early in the spring, when contractors are looking to develop their backlog for the summer. So you'd like to make sure that your major projects are being tendered when prices will be the most competitive, instead of chasing contractors at the end of a season and trying to negotiate a price at that point. So we'd like to provide some direction as well in the timing for the different activities required in order to complete a tendering process for road capital projects. So thank you very much for your time to provide you with that update.
Okay, thank you very much for the detailed presentation, Marco. It's there's lots of information there. I do like the idea of having a working committee of council meet with you guys to kind of go over some of the finer details and then present back. And I will say that we have been getting better at getting our budget done earlier. So it certainly gives staff extra time to get all that stuff in line. So some very good points. I'll go to Councillor Lang, then to Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you. And thank you, Marco and Mr. McLeod for the presentation. One thing in the presentation would have been helpful for me would be instead of square meter, if it was by kilometer. I know road widths do vary, but it would make it a little easier for us to get our head around it instead of having to try to do the math. It was nice to see this presentation. It gives us a lot more information. I found it very helpful. I will agree with Deputy Mayor that we need to have a committee. I think the problem is going to be that this council is very involved and that we're all going to want to be on the committee. So I don't know how we're going to sort that out, but anyway, but I'm putting my name forward right now to get a jump on the rest of them. But anyway, I think this is something that we need to address. I was happy to see your numbers as far as the double surface treatment. I think that shows that there is some room for us in the future to kind of continue to upgrade some of our roads. And I'm glad to see that the majority of at least our rural paved roads are in good shape. My personal opinion is in the hamlets, if they're not quite as good, the residents there at least have a lot less distance to travel on them to get to where they're going if they're heading to Cornwall or whatever. They are a short distance and then they're onto one of the main roads. But I do think we need to keep upgrading them because we can't let them completely fall apart, because it seems to cost a lot more whenever we do anything in a in a hamlet if we need drainage or storm sewers or this sort of thing. So it was a lot of money to do the south side of the river in Williamstown. So we do need to keep them up so we don't end up with those real high cost roads. Anyway, thank you very much for the presentation, and look forward to moving on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Martinell.
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I guess I'll be the second member to say I want to put my name forward for that committee. So if it's only a 2-member committee, sorry guys. I guess my first question for Mr. Mckay and McLeod is it realistic to expect more than 14 years out of our surface treated roads? I know I can name a few that, were done maybe post 2013, let's say, and have had to have serious repairs done to them, while during this term of council anyways, for sure. One that comes to mind is Beaverbrook, and the Glen side road, I'm sure we got 14 years out of, but as somebody who's driven up it quite a bit, it definitely needed to be done about 10 years ago. So I guess my question is there something we're missed that I guess we haven't been doing in the past that we should be doing going forward as we plan to do some of these gravel roads, or we look at doing them, or were some of them maybe done in haste in the past?
Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Okay, Councillor McDowell, just to respond to that, is there something that can be done ahead? Yes, I think there is. And Marco touched on it. It's very important that we get information from the people that are using it on a day-to-day basis or repairing it on a day-to-day basis. And that may be, if it's a gravel road, the most important thing, if we want to move it ahead, might be your grader operator that's doing the maintenance on it. He's spotting the soft spots, the wet spots, the areas that are most prevalent to potholes or lack of drainage. So that information has to be gathered. And I think if the proposal is to do Road A in 2022, well, we should be putting that together, meeting with the township staff to determine, are there any weak spots in what was there prior? And if there are, how do we address them? And then supplement that with some geotechnical work where we'd have a geotechnical engineer come in and do a few test bits along the way to determine, it might be only a portion of the road, it might be all of the road. And I think what we found in the past, although sometimes it seems to be good to go from granulars to surface treatment, if the base is not there, if the drainage is not there, we're just wasting our money. But I think, the geotechnical engineer has got to supplement the information that's coming from, your roads guys that are driving on it all the time, your monthly visits or weekly visits on the road, notations that are done that, between this 2-kilometer section here is always trouble. Well, that's a 2-kilometer section that has to be fixed up. It's no use trying to put a hard surface on it if the stability of the road is not there. So I think things that have to be done, and maybe mistakes that were made in the past, is there just wasn't enough investigation into the condition of the road before moving it forward. And then the second thing I think that has to take a look at, and we noticed that when Chris and I were doing just a drive around through the township roads, some of the roads have very heavy traffic on them. And those roads, maybe they're not a candidate for double surface treatment whatsoever. Maybe you either leave them in granular or step them up and put them into asphalt where you have a much more robust structure. So I think there has to be considerations more for the structure of the road, the intent of the road, who's using the road, before making the decision, well, let's just double surface treat it or let's asphalt it. So I think those are things that can be done, and a lot of that information is coming from within.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. And yeah, I agree with you. I know there's some roads I saw even in that list, I guess just as a comment for say 2024, there's a few roads in there where I don't even know if we'd have the widening done in time, let alone be able to go in and do geotechnicals on some of these roads that we'd like to upgrade. And there's a few that I know if we do upgrade, they might be good with double surface treatment now, but the increased traffic will definitely be looking or be wishing we did a paved job. Thanks for the presentation, both of you. It was very, very good to see something like this come forward, and I think it'll be very helpful moving forward, especially with the working committee.
Okay, moving on. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through Deputy Mayor Warden. Thank you, Mr. Vincelli, Mr. McLeod, for your presentation. So I guess a couple of things I want to make sure that I'm taking away correctly is that this presentation versus the one from July, like the costing in this one is maybe more, I don't want to say accurate, but more precise, more dialed in. So if we're looking at trying to get a sense of what improvements cost, we should refer back to this one. But what I'm hearing from you also is that what we're missing is that we just, like in terms of data, we don't have good data on how our roads hold up over time to be able to really have a clear picture on, you know, what is the actual life cycle that we're achieving. And so that's going to take some time to develop. But I do really appreciate the vision here that you're trying to promote about us being much more deliberate about what we're doing, because I think from those pie charts that were shown at the very beginning, we're fairly deliberate in some areas of the township, but it seems that when it comes to the hamlets, we have really we haven't given those the attention that they deserve. And some of them, although the distance is not long, the condition is really quite poor. So as Councillor Lang already said, we'll all want to be involved, and certainly I have a lot of interest for things like this that have details and procedures and decision trees. So, but I guess we'll have to see how that plays out and who's available to participate. But again, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, that's good. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, good. Seeing none, I'm going to read the resolution as it's written. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 119-2021 be received and that administration be directed to prepare a road maintenance plan for the corporation of the Township of South Glengarry, and furthermore that a road master plan committee be established to assist in preparation of this plan. All those in favor, Kelly?
Sorry. Just before you call for the vote, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the resolution that you just read accompanies a staff report that was immediately following this presentation. So I'm not sure if Mr. LeBlanc has anything to add before council votes on that resolution.
Thank you for that. Let me just review that quickly. Mr. LeBlanc, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just like to add, administration is seeking direction on how to establish criteria for prioritization, which will help determine the priority of roads for maintenance and rehabilitation efforts and a timeline for the tendering process. The administration also further recommends the internal committee be established to assist with the development of the road maintenance plan.
Okay, that's perfect. So that was very well clearly spelled out. So we will get this voted on and move forward. All those in favor of the motion as it was read? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We will get that committee formed and move forward. Thank you. Moving on to staff report 120-2021. Stop up and close former Lancaster Estates subdivision. Ms. Haley or Ms. Compo?
Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'll get started. And as you can see, Kelly and I worked on this report jointly. She very competently prepared the bylaw where I did some of the more of the background research on this property. I know that our council is very familiar with this property because many years ago, as you can see in my staff report, we had gone through a process to deem this subdivision as no longer a subdivision. And you can see that it took quite some time due to a few hiccups that arise throughout the process with the registry office. And it resulted in a couple of solicitors having to do different processes to ensure that this parcel of property was turned into one parcel that would enable us to sell it. Recently, Mr. Surdek has been working on our behalf to finalize this and has suggested one last step in the process to make sure we really are getting our ducks in a row and not causing any issues if and when we choose to sell this land. And that was to stop up and close these roads. And this is something that was missed during the process where we had gone through with real tax, which was a public process to be able to take that land back due to unpaid back taxes. So we're now at that process where we have the bylaw before council. And this is necessary for us to move to the next step to be looking at selling this property. And we do hope to have a staff report before council at our next council meeting that will speak to this property being surplus and how we're going to plan on selling this property. And we are waiting for a full appraisal. And the reason for the appraisal was for two reasons. One, our bylaw requires us to do an appraisal. And two, there's potential for this property, given the size of it, being that it was formerly a subdivision, there's different options. So that's why we want to do it the right way to ensure that we're going to maximize the potential profits available. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself for the next meeting, but the purpose of the bylaw tonight is to simply stop up and close the roads. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your work on this file. I can just imagine. Okay, any questions of committee council members? Seeing none. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 120-2021 be received and that bylaw 74-2021 being a bylaw to stop up and close the roads formerly registered as Don Boudria Drive, pins 671530280, 675308282, 671530283, and 671530284. Donna Lisa Road, pins 671530281 and 671530285. And Kimberly Lynn Road, pin number 671530279, located in part of Lot 3, Concession 9 in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in the township of South Glengarry, county of Glengarry. Be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in this open council the 7th day of September 2021. All those in favor of the long resolution? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Okay, moving on to staff report 121-2021. Land donation request, Habitat for Humanity, Miss Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Habitat for Humanity has been in discussions with our CAO and our municipality for, I believe, several months now, looking to see if it would be possible for them to have another successful build in South Glengarry in the future. As you can see in my staff report, that our CAO and myself met with Lee Taggart from Habitat for Humanity on August 6th. And what we did was we reviewed our surplus land listing to just show what's available in the municipality, what is owned by the municipality, and what could be considered to be donated if council was interested. In that review, I know council's aware that we have some parcels of property that are very rural or more large in nature that wouldn't be conducive to a residential build. And I believe the property in Green Valley, certainly stood out. This property stood out for a couple of reasons. One, it was already declared surplus. And two, it's located in a community surrounded by residential development and has amenities in the community that a family could benefit from. And it's also serviced by, or can be serviced by, wastewater services. So Mr. Mills and I had basically showcased this area and provided some information, and Habitat for Humanity reviewed it and filed a formal request with our municipality to see if council would consider donating any land for future development. And that development would occur in 2024. However, you'll see in my staff report that the transfer of the land would have to occur in advance, just to allow Habitat for Humanity to be able to prepare for the site figure out the site works, obtain necessary permits and things like that. You will also see in the staff report that if council is interested, I listed some potential items that should be considered for our 2022 budget. And then, of course, with the resolution that's before you for you to consider this donation. So we certainly would be open to any discussions, any questions that council may have before we can decide if we're moving forward on this. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Haley. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. Thank you very much, Ms. Haley, for this report. It's very nice to see that this proposal is coming forward. I have a question. When I was looking at the property online, I'm noticing that it's quite a large property. In fact, it's more than twice as big as a lot of the surrounding properties. So I was wondering, is there a possibility to make 2 lots there? Is there a possibility to have even more impact with this township-owned land?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I had the benefit of receiving this question earlier today from Councillor Jaworski, which we certainly appreciate because it does allow us to do more research. And we did have to reach out to our Director of Water and Wastewater Services. Mr. Mckay confirmed that it is possible that we could have a second connection in this location. And you're quite right, this parcel of property is quite large. If I remember correctly, it's 0.83 of an acre. And when you look at a lot of the parcels in Green Valley, they're in the 0.33 to 0.5 acre range. And we can't find any rhyme or reason as to why we have this little segment or leg of land that heads to the north, but that's something that could either remain with that property or be addressed or disposed of down the road when we consider it. If we were to consider dividing this property, as I believe council understands that we don't have to go through a severance process because we are a municipality, it's simply a matter of having a survey completed and registering the property into 2. I'm not sure at this time if it could meet the required minimum lot frontage. It certainly can meet the required minimum lot area. Even if it didn't meet the minimum lot frontage, once we create it, it's considered a building lot of record. And therefore we are allowed to issue a building permit, providing the proposed development can meet the applicable setbacks. In speaking with Habitat for Humanity, it's my understanding that they often look to build a house in the 1,000 square foot range or 1,100 square foot range, which we understand that that is not an overly large footprint. So I don't see an issue with it being divided into 2 and still having adequate space. So we can certainly look forward to receiving that direction of council in dividing that land. And we can proceed with that and budget for that accordingly. It wouldn't take long to do. As you can see, there's other steps that need to be done anyway, like a zoning amendment to remove it from the open space zone. So there's certainly time for us to investigate this property properly. And when you look at the resolution is just allowing us to proceed basically to the next steps. It's really not council committing a definite yes as of yet. So we're still in the investigation stages. So I think this is the perfect time for you to be asking these questions. And just so council's aware, when this was disposed of previously by previous councils, I think at that time, and this is going by memory, it was just listed as excess land. It wasn't really investigated to see what the potential was for division or for future development. So it's a good idea for us to research.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, I personally agree with Councillor Jaworski. It was a point that I was going to bring up. I would really like to see this divided into 2 and give 2 lots. Once those houses are on it, we will be collecting yearly income tax or property tax, pardon me, from them. And Habitat for Humanity is a very well-known charity that I had the pleasure of helping at our last build at the village of Lancaster a few years ago. So can I get a consensus from council? Are we okay with having staff sever this in 2 and donating both lots to Habitat for Humanity? I say that's yes.
I'd agree to that, yes.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I think that's wonderful. And so I will read the resolution and we'll take it to the next step. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 121-2021 be received and that the council of the Township of South Mckay approves the donation of the property legally described as lot A registered. Madam Clerk, should this be rejigged a little bit, because I feel there is going to be a second pin once the second lot is created. So should this be deferred to allow for the proper wording? I mean, council is in favor, but this resolution specifically lines that property, but we will create a second property before.
I don't think we need to.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and this question is for Ms. Haley. If we just strike the PIN number from the resolution, will the legal description remain the same?
That is correct. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, it absolutely does remain the same.
So what we can do, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is we'll just strike the PIN number from we'll do a friendly amendment on that resolution and just take that PIN number out and leave the legal description.
Perfect. Just so that we're able to create the second lot and they'll be able to do two houses. So, okay. Be it resolved that staff report 121-2021 be received and that the council of the Township of South Mckay approves the donation of the property legally described as Lot A, Registered Plan 114 in the geographic township of Schlottenburg, now in the Township of South Mckay, to Habitat for Humanity, Cornwall, and the counties, and furthermore, that administration be directed to prepare a detailed cost breakdown to be included in the 2022 municipal budget. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you all very much. Alrighty. And moving on to staff report 122-2021. Ms. Compo, you have lots on the go tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you. This report that's before you this evening is regarding the compensation that is paid to our appointed livestock evaluator for the Ontario Wildlife Damage Compensation Program. And Council, you may already be familiar with this program. It's run through OMAFRA, and it's a program which compensates property owners who have livestock that is that they lose through predation. So when that livestock is killed by, be it a coyote or another predator, they can apply to the province to receive compensation. And as the municipality, we kind of are the middleman in that process and facilitate that application. So in order to do so, we have an evaluator who is appointed by council at the beginning of the term, who receives compensation per investigation. So the report that's before you this evening and the subsequent bylaw is a suggestion from myself to increase the fee that we're currently paying to our investigator. I've been overseeing this program for almost 4 years now, and actually had the opportunity in late 2019 to attend a training session for the investigators to learn more about the program and what's involved, and had no idea just how much work goes into these investigations and the knowledge that's required to adequately perform the investigation, fill out the forms. There's a very tight time frame for the investigator to go out and complete the investigation. And so the current rate, and we had somewhat of a discussion among our local clerks group, because there's some that are on the lower range, some a little bit higher than us, and we all feel that, or I shouldn't say we all, but there was some agreement that there needs to be some increase in the compensation for these individuals who are providing the service. What really prompted this report to come forward tonight is that oftentimes in the past, we've shared investigators between ourselves and North Glengarry. So if I need someone to do an investigation in South Glengarry and our appointed investigators not available, we can utilize North Glengarry's and vice versa. And our current fees are not the same. So we were hoping to get those in line so that we have the same fee for both North and South Glengarry. So that is the proposal that's before council this evening. So the current compensation rate is $75 per investigation. We are reimbursed $30 of that from the province. So that's $45 that's coming directly from the township. And what's proposed this evening is $150, which with the $30 from the province is $120. And on an average year, I'd say we get 5 to 6 requests. This year, for example, we've only had 2. So it's really dependent year to year how many we receive.
Okay, certainly isn't a large issue on the budget. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I don't see an issue in doing this. I think it's better if we're aligned for the reasons Ms. Compo said. And at the end of the day, there aren't many people that want to go out and do that job to begin with, let alone for $75 or even for $150. So I don't see much issue in upping it.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you. Just a question, Kelly. Are the fence viewers compensated similarly? I'm just wondering if we have a couple of.
Yes, we do compensate our fence viewers. It has been quite a while since we've had one, so I don't know what that is off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest. But I want to say it's the compensation for the fence viewers is higher than the current rate for the livestock evaluator. But I can certainly take a look at that fee in the future as well.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions of council? Seeing none, moved by Martin Lane, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 122-2021 be received and that the bylaw 73-2021 being a bylaw to appoint a livestock valuer for the corporation of the Township of South Glengarry be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the 7th day of September. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No worries. And moving on to staff report 123-2021. Ms. Servige.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, Council. This report is regarding the Peanut Line Bridge rehabilitation. So a technical memorandum was prepared by EVB Engineering in July to provide a structural condition assessment of the Peanut Line Bridge over the Raisin River in Williamstown. The timber bridge deck was found in poor condition and was recommended for replacement. The township with EVB issued a tender in August. Proponents were invited to provide a quote to remove the existing timber deck structure and replace with a new steel beam and grading deck structure. 2 submissions were received. Both suppliers met the required criteria of the tender, and it is recommended that the township award the lowest price submission, which is Glengarry Millwright for $107,500. The township received an ICIP grant of $100,000 for this project. The township also had $60,000 in capital expenditures for the project. The additional $7,500 that is not covered by the grant will come out of capital expenditures.
Okay, great news. Any questions of council? No, perfect. Nice to see 2 local companies bidding. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 123-2021 be received and that tender 19-2021 for the rehabilitation of the Peanut Line Bridge be awarded to Glengarry Millwrights as per their submission of $107,500 plus HST. And furthermore, that the deputy mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Servich. Moving on. Staff report 124-2021, Chief Robertson.
Thank you and good evening, Council. Through your Mr. Deputy Mayor. The 2021 budget included $475,000 for the purchase, or sorry, for the replacement of a water tanker vehicle. That water tanker is currently housed in the Williamstown station. It's currently in its 25th year. We went out to tender for this purchase. It closed in August. We only received a single submission for it, that being Battle Shield Industries, with a value of $423 plus HST, $423,000 plus HST. The proposed vehicle in the submission meets all the specifications of the RFP. We do propose that if we do move forward with this purchase, that minor modifications to the suggested or the proposed vehicle will be done. Those will be done as per change orders with an amount of approximately $5,000. This is for the quick connect mounting of an existing portable pump that we already have in stock. Some properly mounted flashlight system within the truck, and the two-way radio connecting the installation. So the vehicle as such, with the $423,000 submission, added to that would be our portion of the HST, the GST, and the expected modifications of approximately $5,000. These amounts would be about $436,000, well within the allocated budget of $475,000. So we are suggesting that we proceed with the submission from Battle Shield Industries for $423,000 plus HST. Thank you.
Chief, you had said $436,780. Is it a typo from the staff report?
No, so whenever we go out to tender for many projects, submission is given to us from the proponent that under their expectation of what they read the RFP to be. That may not have all of the items that we want on the vehicle. So that's when we add, just like we would with in a building, we'll add or subtract items through change orders. Those change orders are in the amount of about $5,000. The recommendation is only speaking to the amount that the proponent had suggested, the suggested vehicle, because now we'll enter into negotiations for the added approximately $5,000. So
okay, because I add that equals 13,000. I just did it quickly. You said 436 minus 423. It's about $13,000 difference. I don't know if I'm adding something incorrectly or not.
Well,
okay.
Sorry, that's with the our municipal level of GST, which is 1.76%. That's in line 8 of the document.
Okay. I see what you did there. My mistake. Thank you. Okay, these things are getting pretty pricey. Is there any other comments or questions of members of council? It's I guess in this environment, we're kind of lucky we kind of even got a submission. You're satisfied with this vehicle, Chief?
Yes, it is. It's actually considerably less than what we had budgeted. We have modified the vehicle. We considered the vehicle and the location, the Williamstown station where we're going to be placing it. And we were able to remove the imagined pump module on the truck. So this will be a straight tanker. We've actually been able to add significant water volume to the tanker. So it really is a vehicle that is going to very much fit our fleet.
Okay, Great. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 124-2021 be received and that the council of the township of South Glengarry award procurement number 14-2021 for the purchase of a fire tanker apparatus to Battle Shield Industries as per their submission of $423,330 plus HST, and furthermore that the deputy mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you all very much. Okay, so you have to give me a second because we're into the different section of the meeting and I only have so many screens. Okay, so we are other business. So deferral of our September 20th council meeting. Ms. Clerk, did you want to take that one?
Sure, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So our next scheduled regular council meeting is on Monday, September 20th. As I'm sure you're all aware, the federal election is also taking place on that date. So we've added this item for discussion this evening in the event that council is of the opinion that you'd like to defer that meeting to accommodate for that for the election taking place on the Monday. Should council, a majority of council be in favor of deferring the council meeting, we can hold it on Tuesday, the 21st. And I do have a resolution prepared this evening to defer the meeting if that's the will of council. You'll just have to call for a mover and seconder, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if that's the case.
Okay, I'll open it up to the floor for discussion. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'd be happy to move that motion. I'm definitely unavailable the 1st or the 20th of September. So if there's a will of council here to move it to the Tuesday, would save us being to a 3-person council.
Thank you. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Warden. Just because I was called about this particular decision, I asked a few people, to sort of get a sense of, do the public think that this is something we should do? Because I have to admit that in my perspective, because my work schedule is much more difficult to reschedule, I kind of rely on the council meetings to always be on Monday. And so I guess the point that had been brought up to me is just to be very clear that, that staff, like the really important thing about deferring is to ensure that folks have an opportunity to vote. And so I guess that's my question back to staff is in terms of both staff and council. I suppose also we need an opportunity to vote as well if folks aren't having that time during the day. But I guess I wanted to get a sense from staff or maybe the CAO to understand what are the rules about ensuring that staff have a chance to vote during the day, or is this something that the township staff need as well?
Take that, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I couldn't hear your first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so through you, when the polls open and from the time to close, if we had staff that were requesting to vote at a certain time, we'll give them time, whether it's unionized or non-union. Most of our non-union staff, though, are done at either 3:30 or 4 o'clock, so there's ample time for them to vote, as our non-union staff. At that time, we will have some staff that will be working evening hours at the arena, because the arena will be open by then, but they could vote before their shift. So we have to provide time for them if they request, but the request would have to, in order to be, I guess, valid, would have to prove that you couldn't vote on other times, which isn't the case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you. Yes, I'm in favor of this. I think we have precedent. We've done it before. I don't think it's too big. I think people are, I hope most people are interested in watching the federal election. I think it's a pretty big deal. And I would hope that they would watch that before our meeting, actually. But I'd also like them to watch our meeting. So I think we can do it. I mean, it will be a little bit of an inconvenience for myself because I'm supposed to have a fire training meeting on the Tuesday, but we will sort that out. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, as am I. No further discussion needed.
I guess maybe I'll just make a comment though that I probably won't be able to make it on the Tuesday. I will try, but it sounds like it's going to happen anyways, but I probably won't be able to make it because of the move.
Okay.
Is there a time that we could accommodate Councillor Jaworski if we were to, have the meeting a little earlier in the day, a little later? Is there some way that we could make it work for everybody?
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Provided we give enough notice, it does not have to be on the 21st either. I mean, that was suggested as the next day from the 20th, but if there's an alternate day that week, perhaps that works for all of you. I mean, you can set the meeting for a day or time that works for all of you. We just have to provide sufficient notice to the public.
Can it be earlier on the 20th? Or does it have to, it cannot be on the 20th at all?
I know absolutely if it's on the 20th, I will not be available the entire day.
Mr. Mills.
Through Mr. Deputy Mayor, the other thing on the 20th is that, when we have our meetings, it's for accessibility to media and the public. So the night of the election, the federal election, that the public would, for the most part, be focusing, I think, on the federal election, and the media would be focusing their attention on the federal election, although everything is now recorded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang, comments?
What about the 17th, the Friday before? I know Councillor Jaworski sometimes has Fridays a little more free than.
That's correct. It is more free for me.
Councillor McDonnell?
The 17th would be fine with me, I believe. No, I don't think I have anything. Yeah, no, that's not this Friday, so I'm fine.
So are we able to do that during the day, like at a 3 o'clock meeting, as opposed to in the evening? So we can have some people interested in our meeting as opposed to a Friday evening. So does like a 3 o'clock meeting work for everybody, Friday the 17th?
It's not as though we have committee of adjustment as of now, so.
Well, I don't,
that was the comments made this evening's meeting, so.
Right. Well, I mean, if committee adjustment has to happen, it's generally a 15-minute meeting. And correct. So can I show of hands for a 3 o'clock Friday, the 17th of September for our next council meeting? Okay, there it is. So I'll read the resolution as it's been amended. Madam Clerk, and I will moved by Sam and seconded by Martin. That's the order of the hands. Be it resolved that the September 20th, 2021 regular council meeting be not deferred, be advanced to Friday, September 17th at 3 p.m. to accommodate the federal election. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you all very much. And please send a memo out to staff so they're not freaking out. Okay. All righty. So the next is just all the reports. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts the items presented on the agenda as committee reports for information purposes only. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moved, I believe that's, I don't have my, pardon me, got too many screens. All right, moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that council convene to close session at 9:35 p.m. to discuss the following items under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act. 2, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, discussion, identifiable individuals, performance evaluation staff member, and D, labor relations or employee negotiations information report. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you all very much for attending this evening's live meeting, and we will be back once